Hello, everybody. So, welcome to my first Twitch stream. I hope everyone can hear me okay. I'm not sure if we have anybody tuning in quite yet, but I will go ahead and get started. You can watch this on replay. And if you didn't catch it live. So, my name is Delina. My screen name is Witchy Philosophe. And so that is a French word for thinkers of the Enlightenment. And that was a word that I encountered in my AP World History textbook in the 10th grade and stole for my screen name. And because it included journalists. And that's what I do that's my day job hours, as I am a radio journalist. So I just wanted to share a little bit about about what it is that I do, my sort of unique-ish brand of spirituality, and something that I kind of hyper fixate on. So I hope my ADHD doesn't have me zinging all over the place for you guys tonight, but I wanted to do a bit of an introductory post to talk a little bit about what this means and where I'm going to be going with this channel. So, hello. So Joe Rocks 1981 is my partner, and he made this overlay for me. So, if you want to commit to follow him for his retro game streaming, or ask him to do any commission work, he does take commissions. And I see Amanda and Kyle. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate that. And Chelsea, one of my besties since the 9th or 10th grade now. So it's been a very long time. Thank you. I got these earrings in Austin when I was there for teaching at a journalism conference a couple weeks ago. So, and Big Reds, it's nice to see you again. I saw you in Chelsea's stream, and so thank you for being here as well. I appreciate that. So thank you all so much for being here. Matt O'Brien, wonderful. Matt and I have been friends since the 9th grade as well. So, oh no, you were just in Austin. I must have just missed you. I was sort of sequestered to the hotel for most of it. So I was teaching a session on multimedia journalism, and I didn't get a chance to really wander out too much. I did do a ghost tour, so that was really fun. All right, so we have a few people here, so I'm going to stop my inane chit chat and just sort of get started. For those of you who just tuned in, my name is Delina, and my Witchy Philosophe is my screen name, and that is French for thinkers of the Enlightenment, which included journalists, which I do by day and have been doing for 10 plus years. And so I have used that screen name in all of my gaming and in all of my, most of my social media accounts for the last 18 years or so, since the 10th grade. And so, I'm here to talk about my brand of spirituality, which is Atheistic Witchcraft. And so I actually took to social media before my stream tonight to ask people what kinds of questions that they had about Atheistic Witchcraft. And most of them were sort of, pretty basic. What is atheistic witchcraft? So, atheism boils down to not having a belief system in gods or deities. So atheism is a spectrum, just like many other forms of religion or lack thereof. And so you have atheists on one end of the spectrum who believe in absolutely nothing. No deities, no crystal healing, no tarot, no astrology, no spirits, nothing like that. To the other end of the spectrum of atheists who don't believe in deities and gods, but who may believe in what some might consider some of the more woo aspects of spirituality. And so I'm sort of in the middle. I have had encounters that I cannot explain. I'm a pretty skeptical person. I try to think of all the mundane things first, cobwebs and security cameras instead of, spirits, or, bugs on the camera lens instead of spirit orbs and things like that. But I've had experiences that I've not been able to have any rational explanation for. And so it sort of led me to witchcraft. One of the things that I missed when I left the church, I grew up in a pretty straddling fundamentalist church that didn't allow trick-or-treating. We did not... it did not allow dancing initially. It was pretty strict. We went to church 3 times a week. And so when I turned 18, I got out of there as fast as I could. And my questions about why I couldn't be a priest because I wasn't a man, and why, why this, why that, were left unanswered and met with some hostility. And so it just wasn't the right fit for me. And, so I left the church when I turned 18, but I really missed that. I missed the ritual of going to church. I missed the community of the church. I missed the fellowship of the potlucks and the things afterwards. And so I took a world religions course in college and encountered a lot of different religious backgrounds that I had never been exposed to growing up, because my parents were fearful that if I was exposed to some things that were not in line with what the church taught, that I would be tempted to go off and leave the church, which I ended up doing anyway. So, I went to churches of other denominations. I went to a Wiccan full moon ceremony. I went to all kinds of different other types of religious experiences, and nothing quite felt right. Like, Wicca was probably the closest, but by that point I had lost any faith in any deities. And so believing in a god or a goddess, even though my understanding is that some Wiccans do believe in them metaphorically, just really didn't quite fit what I was doing, and it was a little too structured for my taste. A part of why I left religion was because of the structure, and I wanted something that was a little more free form and a little more free thinking, and so I found witchcraft. And I had dabbled as a teenager, like a lot of teenagers do, with Ouija boards and tarot cards and lighting candles and saying little spells with my friends, things I did behind my parents' back. And, but there was just always something about it that felt right. But for years, up until my late 20s, I sort of grappled with this idea of how can I really believe in witchcraft and be an atheist? And so, really what it boils down to is I think that magic is science we just don't yet understand. I think there are things beyond our scope of understanding, beyond things that we can see and sense, that are not necessarily supernatural or not necessarily paranormal, but are part of the natural order of things. And they just happen, to exist without any tools available to measure those things yet. And so that's kind of where I've arrived when it comes to witchcraft practice. Not to mention, there are numerous studies that back up the importance of ritual. Ritual can make us, it can lessen our anxiety, it can make us more confident. And so all of these things are backed up by science. And the funny thing about placebo effect is placebo effect can work even if you know it's placebo effect. And so, that's where I come at witchcraft with rituals. And so, so I do candle magic with color correspondences and things like that. But for me, it's about, it's about sort of internalizing those things that I'm trying to project out into the universe. And so, I don't necessarily believe that crystals, or rocks of any kind have magical healing properties. Is it possible that they vibrate on different wavelengths and that somehow affects the universe in which we live in? Sure, that's possible. I'm not a quantum physicist, and I'm not going to pretend to understand quantum mechanics. I think that there's a lot there that could be used to sort of bring to light, why witchcraft works for a lot of people, but I'm not going to pretend to understand the science behind it. So I'm not going to bore you with my my quasi-science and limited understanding. So, so that's that. And so that's where I come at it from a perspective of a skeptic, and from somebody who also believes that witchcraft works, and it works for me. And there have been times that I have done spells and I've seen the results from those spells, and whether that was the result of some magical energy within the universe, digging its fingers into the situation, or whether it was I believed so hard that something would happen that it would, I'll take it. So the ritual makes me comfortable. I have found comfort in the community. There's a lot of like-minded witches out there. It's atheistic and agnostic witchcraft is a growing segment of witchcraft. And something else I wanted to talk a little bit about too. One of the questions that was asked was how could I be a witch and not believe in like the god and the goddess. Witchcraft is a practice. Witchcraft is not a religion. Witchcraft is a practice that can be paired with religion or lack of religion. And so, for example, my mom's a Christian witch. My mom believes in God and Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit, but she does her worship in her in her practice through witchcraft. So she is a Christian witch, and so and I'm an atheist witch, and so we practice on sort of opposite ends of the spectrum, but we come at it with a respect that the two of us can can practice together and incorporate different aspects of our faith, if we will call it that, and still be, have an understanding of one another's belief system or lack thereof. So, did anybody have any questions in the chat while I'm here? I'm not seeing any yet. I appreciate Chelsea is moderating the chat for me, so thank you so much for doing that, Chelsea. And so if you have any questions, feel free to jump in there. Chelsea says, your passion for tarot has actually helped me get into it myself, and it's been such a healthy experience for me. Yes, I'm really excited. In the future, I'm going to be interviewing one of the hosts of the Tarot Diagnosis, which is an amazing podcast if you haven't checked it out yet. And so it is about the intersection of tarot and psychology, tarot and mental health. And so they come at it from a mental health perspective. And so for me, tarot is a psychological tool for introspection. It is not divinatory. It is not magical. It is not guided by divine hands. It is simply, is simply another mental health tool in my toolkit. And so I know that if I'm asking a question, or if I'm doing a spread where I'm asking a question and trying to get information, that is my way of sort of hacking my own brain and talking to my subconscious. And so when I interpret with the cards I draw, I know that no matter which of the 78 cards of the major or minor arcana that I draw, I know that I'm going to get helpful information from them. And I know it's kind of like when you look at astrology, when you look at your horoscope. And so, not to bash on anybody who's into astrology, it's not something I personally follow, but I find that when I read through the horoscope on any given day, that I could relate to Aries one day, or Taurus the next day, or Sagittarius, which is my sign, another day. And so because they're so broadly written, that those things can apply to you in different parts of your life. And so that's how I feel about tarot, is that it is a psychological tool for introspection, and it is helping me to delve deeper into my subconscious and dig things out that maybe are coming out sort of in my dreams but are very wacky. And it helps me to sort of focus and narrow that focus and keep my ADHD brain sort of on one topic. And so that pretty much sums up tarot for me. There's a couple really great books on tarot that I recommend. One of them's just simply called Tarot and Psychology. The other one is called Tarot at a Crossroads: The Unexpected Meeting of Tarot and Psychology. So this is one of my favorite books. It's sort of written for clinicians, by clinicians, but if you have even, if you're a reader, if you have even a basic understanding of psychology, it's not difficult to follow. It's written mostly in layman's terms. Things are explained really well. So I absolutely love Tarot at a Crossroads. And again, the other one was Tarot and Psychology. So those are two really great books. Another one that I recommend is written by Jessica Dorr, and it's called Tarot for Change. That's using the cards for self-care, acceptance, and growth. And what I really like about this book is that it goes through, and there's a section for each of the 78 cards. So there's 3 or 4 pages for each card that sort of breaks down what that card means to the author and how it applies to mental health. This person is not a psychologist or a therapist, but comes from a social worker background. And I found that it's very, very helpful, and it's a book that's often recommended by therapists. So I definitely recommend Tarot for Change. I've got a whole stack of books beside me that I can pull out here to recommend to folks on different topics related to atheism and secular witchcraft. And I also want to talk a little bit about the difference between the two. So atheistic witchcraft is practicing witchcraft without deities and gods, and secular witchcraft is is practicing without deities and gods, but that person might be a religious person. So most of the work that my mom does as a Christian witch is secular witchcraft. So if she does a spell for the land spirits, or she does a prosperity spell, and she does not bring God or Jesus into it, it is a secular spell. And so, you could be a Christian, or you could be a Buddhist or a Hindu or Jewish or any number of things, and have your religion and have your witchcraft practice separate. And so I practice atheistic witchcraft. I'm also a secular witch. And so the two books that I recommend for secular witches when they get their start, they're pretty basic books. They kind of break down how to write your own spells, give some examples of spells, and explain a little bit more about what witchcraft is to beginners. That would be Grove Daughter Witchery, by a Practical Spellcraft by Bree Nagarin. And then another book by Bree Nagarin, The Sisters Grimoire. So those are two really great books that you can pick up wherever books are sold. You can order them through Amazon. You can order them through small bookstores, new age shops, things like that, if you want to support mom and pop instead. And it's really a really fantastic way to delve into basic witchcraft from a secular viewpoint. And I just want to give four more quick book recommendations. So along the lines of, this isn't tarot specific, but Witchcraft Therapy is also a secular book. It's really fantastic. Your Guide to Banishing Bullshit and Invoking Your Inner Power. I highly recommend this. There are no deities involved. There are no gods or goddesses. If you do work with deities, it is just as applicable to your work. So, it is just, it is all about finding yourself in your witchcraft and empowering yourself. And then for those who are interested in the paganism aspect, there's Godless Paganism, which is a book of essays by non-theistic pagans. And it is not necessarily witchcraft specific, but it does explain how people came to paganism and witchcraft despite being non-theistic. And so I really like that. And then if you're looking for history, there is the Timeless Drawing Down the Moon by Margot Adler, who was an NPR journalist, and I work for an NPR member station, so I was really excited when I found out about Margot's work. And so this is sort of a compendium of witches, druids, goddess worshippers, and other pagans in America. It was written, I believe, in the 1960s or 70s, so I wouldn't say that it's out of date. It's not. It hasn't quite come all the way up into the modern age. And then, but you have other authors like Corey Thomas Hutchinson, who put out New World Witchery. And this is a compendium of folk magic specifically, but it is written sort of like an encyclopedia in a way. So it's broken down by different cultures, by different techniques in witchcraft, but it's all folk magic in North America, and I highly recommend that book. So if you're sort of delving into witchcraft for the first time. So there's a few book suggestions for you to get started, and I hope that's helpful, because for me, one of the nice things about the information age that we live in is between the mass amount of books and blog posts and Patheos Pagan and all kinds of different websites. There's not necessarily a need for you to have to join a coven. So, back before the internet age, back before message boards, back before this really treasure trove of books that have come out in recent years, because witchcraft has expanded into mainstream popularity, you really had to join a coven to learn a lot of different things. And there are still covens that follow specific paths that you have to be initiated in. And so there's definitely still, use for a coven. But if you want to get started and you want to start learning about witchcraft now, you don't have to be close to anybody who's in a coven. And so I really, I find that helpful. I'm in a small coven of 4 people, one of whom lives out of state. And so we are bringing her in on video chats for our rituals and things like that. And we teach one another because we all follow different paths in witchcraft. But, we do a lot of learning on our own. So, so that's starting with the books. So let me pull up a few more of the questions that I had been asked. I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat. Does anybody else have anything that they're curious about? Any topics? In the future, I am going to be breaking this down by topic. This is just sort of a quick overview of what you can expect from the channel going forward in the future. Like I said, I'll be interviewing somebody specifically on tarot and mental health and psychology. And I hope to break it down by certain, other topics like cultural misappropriation, candle magic, things like that. So if you're interested in really delving into what those things mean, I'm going to share some examples and share, share a little bit about what my practice actually looks like in actuality, because I think that can be really helpful. I'd like to talk about how a secular atheist witch might set up an altar if you don't believe in deities and things of that nature. So if you have any questions, please jump in and feel free to ask away. So, how would sigils work psychologically? Okay, I think sigils work similarly to tarot cards, except instead of taking a preset image, so you have your preset images, like if you're using like the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot deck, there are certain images, the discs, the swords, the wands, the cups, and the different things that are sort of preset already and already have traditional meanings. Whereas in chaos magic with sigils, you are creating the intention. And so I think I view it similarly to crystals. Like, I don't believe that black tourmaline literally banishes negativity. But I believe that by wearing black tourmaline, it reminds me to let negativity roll off my back. And so I feel like sigil sort of works similarly. And so it gives me something to focus on in my spellcraft, something I can write on my body, something I can incorporate into my makeup, something I can scribble on a candle. And it sort of sets that focus, and it forces me to narrow my focus for that spellcraft into a single sentence or a single word, which I think is really helpful when it comes to ritual, because part of what makes ritual so effective is repetition. And so if you have a short phrase or a short sentence that is represented by the sigil, and then you are placing that sigil in various places, that repetition is reinforcing, what you're trying to manifest. So I hope that answered the question. I love sigil work. There's a couple different schools of a sigil, of sigil work where, you can approach it. One is writing out your phrase and then scratching out all the repeated letters and the vowels. And then you take the remaining letters and you combine them into your sigil, which is probably one of the most common methods of sigil work. And, there's Laura Tempest Zakroff's sigil witchery book, which is really fascinating, and it talks about what the meanings of different smaller symbols like periods and X's and crosses and swirls and different things, like what they mean, and then teaches you how to incorporate those into a sigil design that you've sort of meditated on. So, hello, Danny. Fantastic, Danny. Yay, my in real life bestie. And a few other folks who have jumped over from Danny's channel, I believe. Thank you all so much for being here. So we are talking about atheistic witchcraft and secular spirituality. And so I have just gone over some book recommendations that you can look back over after the stream has ended, and how to reconcile not having faith in a deity versus following something that's considered to be kind of woo by a lot of people. And so for me, it's about ritual, it's about placebo effect, it's about hacking my own brain. And Danny says, I am very sweaty. I would imagine you were going hard on that DDR. So that is perfectly okay. I hope you cool down soon. So, you guys can also follow me over on Twitter at Witch Philosoph and Witchy Philosoph on Instagram, and that is where I post a lot of my work, especially on Instagram, behind the scenes pictures of my altar, witchy crafts that I'm working on. I'm working on repainting an herb cabinet that I got on a Buy Nothing group because it was a hideous shade of yellow with dry brushed with brown that made it look filthy. So, I had to paint it black and probably gold brush it, dry brush it in gold, and do some sigil work on it myself. And yes, the bugs behind me, Danny got me those. So thank you so much, Danny. I love those. They're like some of my favorite things, and everybody brings it up every time I have a Zoom meeting at work. People are like, "Oh, look at the bugs." So, not a question, but a comment. Thank you for sharing your work on your ancestor altar. I'm casually atheistic and love the idea of it, but didn't want to feel like I was stepping on the toes of any particular religious practice or institution. So, and DDR Kiko Mix, thank you for tuning in. Have a good night. So ancestor work is not owned by anybody, and so there may be certain aspects of ancestor work that are closed practices, but honoring your own ancestors is definitely not. And the way that I approach ancestor work, I've done some genealogy work, and so I've been able to trace back, some of my ancestors, back a few hundred years. But the reality is, for a lot of those that are as pasty-faced as myself, is that we have some not so great people in our lineage. And so those are not people that I want to work with. And so my ancestor altar is generally focused on people that I've physically known who have passed on from this world. And so that includes people like my dad and my grandparents and even close friends, those family members that you call aunt and uncle that aren't really blood or marriage related. People like that are the people that I work with on my ancestor altar. And so do I believe that they actually imbibe my offerings and, witness what I'm doing and send me messages? I'm not really sure. That really boils down to me for, again, that, magic and the afterlife and things of that nature, science we don't yet understand. And so I think that there's something beyond this world. I don't believe in heaven or hell. I don't believe in a lot of religious constructs. But that's how I approach ancestor work. And so I've got novena candles of like my dad and other family members, little tokens that were theirs. You can't go wrong if you're using little things that were owned and loved, by your ancestors on your altar. You don't have to worry about appropriation generally. I've got Disney pins underneath the picture of my grandmother and grandfather because they were huge Disney files. They loved Disney. And so I've got all kinds of taxidermy scorpions and all kinds of Marine Corps pins and all kinds of weird stuff for my dad to represent him. And so I don't have to worry about stepping over the line of cultural appropriation. Danny says, we also have the advantage of having our ancestors tracked, and some have no idea because their history was literally erased. And that is true. There are people who want to do ancestor work who are not able to because of whitewashing and colonialism and all those terrible things that have happened and continue to happen. And so, they might generally do general ancestor veneration, and they might do, some people I know have done deep guided meditations and things, and they believe that their unknown ancestors, the ancestors that weren't able to be tracked, have visited them in dreams and have come to them and made themselves known, and then they've incorporated them into their practice. But it's very difficult when you can't pull up ancestry DNA and track everything back, because so much of history has been erased and rewritten, and unfortunately it's left a lot of people without knowing who exactly their ancestors are. So that's a really good point, Danny. So thank you for bringing that up. So, but yeah, if you want to see my ancestor altar, it is on my Instagram. I have pictures of that there. I try to share when I make additions to it. There's definitely a school of thought of folks who believe that you shouldn't share your altars on social media, and I totally respect that. I disagree for myself. For me, I found it immensely helpful when I first got started in witchcraft to see pictures of other people's altars, because all I was aware of was the setup that you generally see recommended. A lot of books are written with a Wiccan flavor. There's nothing wrong with Wicca, but if you're not a Wiccan, it's a little bit of a turnoff, or you don't quite feel a connection to it. And so, when I tried setting up an altar with my, my athame and my besom and my chalice and, god and goddess candle and, and whatever, like it never felt right for me. And so finding, thank you for sharing that link to my Instagram, Danny. And so finding, other people's altars, mostly through Tumblr initially, before Witches of Instagram really took off. I was able to really sort of get some ideas about how I could decorate my own altar and make it work for me. And really it just boils down to do what you feel is right. Have the tools that you regularly use, have the decorations that have the symbolism that is important to you. Decorate for the holidays if you want to decorate for the holidays. That doesn't have to be the Wiccan Wheel of the Year. I've created my own Wheel of the Year because the Wiccan Wheel of the Year in Florida does not appeal to me. We have 2 seasons, hot and hotter. And we don't, a lot of things are able to be grown year round, and so we don't quite have the same harvesting seasons that the wheel is based off of. Yes, Danny, Tumblr is more than fanfics. You do have to, like with anything, you have to vet the information, because anybody can write anything they want, and so there's a lot of bad information on there. But it's a good place to kind of to have a springboard and figure out what path that you want to follow. And so I still regularly check into Tumblr, even if I don't post as much as I should. I think that anybody who feels comfortable sharing their practice on their social media might want to consider it, because it does help other people who are coming into the practice for the first time. And not all of us, like I said, have access to covens. Not all of us can safely be. I'm not really a big fan of the out of the broom closet term, because I feel like it sort of appropriates the LGBTQIA plus struggle. But for lack of a better word, there are folks who are not able to practice openly because it is not safe for them. And so, social media and before I was able to be more open with my witchcraft, social media showed me what an altar might look like that isn't obviously an altar. And so I think being able to connect to people is very important when you're first starting out, and being able to ask questions and see those pictures and see people who are willing to share that. There's a lot that I don't share on social media. I don't always share active spells, especially when I'm doing something that's considered baneful magic, like hex work. Sometimes I do work because I'm very, very angry about the state of the world, and I can't necessarily show it because somebody from work might find it, and I'm a journalist, and I am supposed to remain impartial and objective. And unfortunately, you can't really remain impartial or objective in witchcraft. Witchcraft is political. So it's been political from its very roots, and it will always be political, and it's always been about the oppressed, and it's always been about, uplifting the oppressed. And so I have to carefully balance what I do publicly and what I do in the and what I do in my own private practice, and try to keep that balance. And dark hellfire, that's a struggle. It is absolutely a struggle, and it's really unfair, to be honest, to pretend like that I have to go into work and pretend like I can't support human rights. But I do what I have to do to keep my job so that I can do the work that affects change. And so in witchcraft, I think it's important to do the work. And that means that you can do a spell to protect Black Lives Matter protesters, but you need to be doing work that makes it makes it so that they can be safe. You need to be going out and voting, for people who are going to keep them safe and not attack them at protests. You need to be going to your local city council meetings to talk about how protesters are mistreated. You need to be out there protesting and, if it's safe and if you're able to do that. So, and yeah, Danny, it really is awful that standing up for the oppressed is considered political and not being a decent human being. And that's a real struggle for me in my work. So that's pretty much what I have for you all tonight. I just wanted to give a quick introduction to who I am and what I'm doing. And the following streams will be a little less ADHD and a little more focused on topics that I will be posting ahead of time. And so I just really wanted to test my first stream, get it out there, get used to being in front of the camera. I'm used to being behind the mic, but not being in front of a camera. And I'm used to having at least one other person on the other side of the mic that I can physically see. So this is a change for me. And so I really appreciate with, all of you guys putting up with my rambling and, in my stuttering and my various pauses and interjections, because this is new for me. So I really appreciate you tuning in. A lot more people than I expected. So thank you again, Danny and Chelsea, for doing your raid. I really appreciate that. And for those of you who now know me, if you'd like to follow me and keep up with other, with other streams that I'm going to be doing, I hope to stream at least weekly. And so probably on Wednesday nights. And so that'll probably be my streaming night. I will not be doing another stream this Wednesday because I want to prep really well for the first stream that's a little more focused. So expect next Wednesday for me to do another stream. And thank you all so much for being here. I really appreciate your time and on this Monday night. And I really hope you have a wonderful week. And so take care.